The fact that you're gonna have situations where you feel like everyone hates you. Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're gonna be talking about car sales and whether or not you should go into car sales. I recently made a video where I talked about how I was a car salesman for 3 years and about how much money I made being a car salesman, and it actually got a ton of interest from people because they're all like, wow, I didn't realize that you could make that much money from being a car salesman. And yeah, I figured I'd make a video on basically kind of like the pros and cons, but really just talking about car sales in general, what you should do to prepare yourself if you are looking into doing it, and really just whether or not you should even look into doing it. So the first big thing that you want to know is the fact that you're going to have to work a lot of hours, especially if you want to be successful as a car salesman. My best months as a car salesman were months that I spent pretty much living at the dealership, and it just kind of comes along with the territory. Here in Utah, dealerships can only be open Monday through Saturday. They have to be closed on Sundays. And so, again, in my most successful months, I was at the dealership Monday through Saturday. And in terms of how many hours I worked, I'm sure most weeks were 60, 70 hours a week, sometimes even more. And it was because I was going to the dealership every single day, typically right before noon, and I would stay until closing time, which was at about 9 o'clock. And so you imagine doing that every single day of the week, pretty much, obviously minus Sundays, and you can easily get up to 60, 70, 80 hours a week, because sometimes you come even earlier and sometimes you leave even later. And so just understand that, especially if you want to be successful, you're going to work really long hours, and the hours aren't necessarily going to be set. You're going to have some days where you have to come in really early because you have a customer that needs something, or you're going to have to stay really late because, again, a customer needs something. And so, again, just go in with that expectation. Don't go in with the expectation that you're just going to show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're going to leave at 4 o'clock in the morning every single day and you're only going to be there 5 days a week. I mean, I guess you could do that, but you won't sell as many cars and you won't make as much money. Now, the next thing to understand is the fact that you are going to be working a lot outside of work. So not only are you going to spend a lot of hours at the dealership, you're going to spend a lot of hours outside the dealership still doing work. You're going to have customers call you because they have issues with their car. And again, maybe you're just lounging on your couch or whatever you're doing on your day off. And well, then you got to go, and maybe you have to go into work that day because of that. Or maybe you have to go and help your customer on the side of the road, whatever it may be. And then there are other situations where maybe you have, and if you're smart, and I'll talk about this later in the video, is if you have internet leads being sent to you, you're gonna have to answer those on your day off or when you're trying to relax, whatever you're doing. And so that's the thing about car sales that's so intensive, is it really takes over your whole life. Not only do you have these long hours at the dealership, but work never really ends. Even when you're not at the dealership, you're still doing work in one way or another, because it's a people-oriented business. And since you're selling, as long as you're doing anything that's associated with selling, you're going to have to be selling all day, every single day pretty much, and you're going to have to help the people that you sell all day, every day. And so yeah, it's a super intensive thing time-wise. The next thing you're gonna have to understand is you're gonna have to do a lot of work for free. And this is the one that's really hard for people, because most people coming into car sales typically come from a job where they got paid an hourly wage, so they're used to getting paid no matter how much effort they put into a situation. And car sales just isn't like that. You're gonna have some situations where you're gonna put a ton of effort into it and you won't make any money. But then you'll have other situations where you put literally no effort into it and you'll make tons of money. And so it kind of just goes both ways. And so you just have to understand that everything evens out. And as long as you're doing the right thing and you're helping people out, then it'll all pay off in the long run. But that's just something that you have to accept going into car sales, is you'll have days where you're going to work all day and you're going to just give it your all and you won't make any money, and it'll feel horrible. But again, it's just part of the business. Now, another part of car sales is the fact that you kind of have to be an annoying, relentless person in a sense. And what I mean by this is you have to never give up on customers. So the market right now is a little bit different. It's a little bit easier. People pretty much are just buying left and right. But the kind of standard way of selling, how things usually go, is a lot of people are going to come into the dealership. A lot of people are going to call into the dealership. A lot of people are going to submit internet leads, and they are not going to be buying a car for quite some time. I had it happen all the time when I worked as a salesperson. Someone would submit an internet lead on a truck and they'd say, oh, that's cool, but I'm not going to buy anything for the next 6 months. I'm not going to buy anything for the next year. And most salespeople just give up at that point. You can't. You have to be relentless with this stuff. You have to just not give up on these customers. And so what I would do is I would have that conversation with the person. I would say, okay, that's completely fine. I understand. would you like me to send similar vehicle options that I get in if I feel like they're a good deal? And most people are pretty right. You're just being helpful. So most people are like, yeah, as long as you're not going to be harassing me. And you need to make sure that you're not harassing these people, right? That's something that's very important. There's kind of a fine line with that. And so you just do things that are helpful to these people. So you send them these vehicle options that come in. And again, if someone says they're not going to buy for 6 months, then you also ask the question, hey, I know you said you're not going to buy for 6 months, but is it okay if I follow up with you just once a month or once every 2 months just to check up and just to let you know that, hey, I'm in this for you. I actually care. I actually want to help you out. And most salespeople don't do that. And so it actually helps you differentiate yourself. But obviously, it's more work, and it's just one of the things with the business, and you just can't stop. I had so many customers, and the reason why I sold so many cars in the short time that I worked there is I wouldn't give up on these customers. Like, I'd have these customers, they would tell me that, and guess what? On my calendar, I would set something, and I would contact these people on a regular basis, send them stuff on a regular basis, and more often than not, they would actually end up buying sooner. But on top of that, they would end up buying from me because I was the only salesperson they felt like cared about them, because I put time and effort into continuing the contact after they reached out versus just giving up on them because they weren't buying that day. Now, this one that I want to quickly get into is the fact that you're going to have situations where you feel like everyone hates you, and so you just really need to have thick skin if you're going to be a salesperson. And what I mean is you could have your boss really mad at you because you're not selling enough cars, you're not making enough money off the cars, and you're making mistakes, you're not calling enough people, all this kind of stuff. And so you feel like, oh my gosh, my boss hates me. And then you might have other salespeople that are hating on you because maybe you sold a car they were trying to sell, or maybe they talked to a customer that you just sold 6 months ago, even though they didn't follow up or do their job. They still feel like they're entitled to sell that customer a car, and now they're mad at you. And then on top of that, your customer might be mad at you because you sold them a car and it broke down, and you've got to deal with all that sort of situation. And then on top of that, your family might be mad at you because you're working too many hours, you haven't spent any time with them, and your friends are mad at you because of the same reason, right? You can have these situations happen. I had it happen several times where like everything was kind of like collapsing in all at once, and you feel like it's the end of the world because everyone's pissed off at you and you don't even know how to fix it because like you're super overwhelmed, and you just have to be able to just be like super cool under those conditions and just keep pushing and get through it and understand that, hey, if the customer has a car that broke down, it'll get taken care of, right? You'll figure something out with management and with your service department. If your manager's mad at you because you're not making enough calls and selling enough cars, well, you try calling more customers, you try working a little bit more so that you can make your manager happy, right? There's things that you can do to fix that. And there's just always a fix for something. And typically the fix comes from you helping someone out and from you doing a little bit more than what you're doing now, right? That downtime that you spend as a salesperson, what are you actually doing in that downtime? And a lot of the times, if you actually spend more time and effort in that downtime you get as a salesperson, you can actually prevent a lot of these problems from happening, or you can spend that time fixing them. So yeah, that's another thing though, is you will feel like just everyone hates you in certain situations. And I feel like the biggest thing that happens because of all these other things I've mentioned is potential negative impacts on your health. And this just happens because of a number of different reasons, right? There's a lot of things that you just can't do anymore because you're working so many hours. I mean, for me, for example, when I got into sales, I weighed like under 180 pounds and I was in really good physical health. By the time I quit, I weighed like over 200 pounds and I was like in the worst shape of not in the worst shape of my life ever, but pretty close. And there's just a number of reasons why this happens, right? You're working long hours. And so maybe you don't have as much time to work out, which was the case for me. I didn't have as much time at the gym. And then on top of that, I was super stressed out. And so my hormone balance was all messed up. And then on top of that, I wasn't getting enough sleep. And then with the long hours and the lack of sleep and everything, then you end up eating out more often because you don't have time for it and you're too stressed out to make food yourself. And so then it just kind of is like this whole topple down effect. And for me, I ended up gaining a little bit over 20 pounds. And yeah, it just wasn't fun whatsoever. And so that's definitely something that can happen. You need to be careful with it. You need to find some balance, right? It is definitely worth it to work hard in sales and everything, but you need to make sure that you're getting enough sleep and that you're exercising enough and that you're still eating healthy. Like the one thing that I would definitely recommend for salespeople, don't eat out. If you get into sales, try to bring food to the dealership and everything so that you aren't eating out. And obviously that'll save you money, but on top of that, it'll make sure that you stay in better health, and make sure you have, I mean, this is just general advice, right? Just make sure you have a regular exercise routine and all that. Now that's going to sum things up for today's video in terms of going over kind of my experience with sales and the things that I would kind of prepare yourself for on the negative side. Now I will be making a video of things that you should prepare yourself, I guess, for on the positive side, but it's easier to accept positive things than negative things. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? Positive things, it's like, oh, yep, please come here. Negative things, it's like, oh gosh, stay away, right? But anyways, if you're stopping for the first time, please subscribe. And then again, if you feel like my videos have really helped you, I'd really appreciate your support on Patreon. I've got a link in the description below. And yeah, I'll see all of you guys in the next video.